As we said yesterday, yes, it is incredibly close. On the one hand, on the red soft Pirelli tyre at the back end of Q3, when it really matters, when pole position is out there for the taking, it was Max Verstappen who took up where he left off in Abu Dhabi last year, took the pole in Bahrain, his first pole at that circuit, by the margin of 0.4 of a second. That is a significant margin by any standards. However, on the other side, you have to weigh that up against what happened in Q2 when both Max and Sergio Perez, that's another story, and the two Mercedes drivers, and for a while the two McLaren drivers, and the two AlphaTauri drivers, again, that's another story, were on the medium tyre because that's the tyre on which they want to start the race tomorrow. When they're on that medium tyre, Lewis was 0.3 quicker than Max Verstappen. That's why it is incredibly close. The biggest unanswered question right now is not so much as why is the Red Bull Honda so quick? We know why it's quick. It's a really good Adrian Newey car. It is the epitome of the high rake art in Formula One. At the back end of a formula where everybody's been working to tiny aerodynamic detail to the point where it is, yes, now much closer because there's not many other parts of the envelope which can be pushed right now. No, the big unanswered question is why the Mercedes, which it looks like the car of old when it's on its medium race tyres, good balance, good use of tyres, Lewis Hamilton looking relatively comfortable in the car. When they put the soft tyre on, he doesn't get the same advantage as Max Verstappen. Now you could say, of course, that Lewis didn't get the perfect lap in Q3. The margin over his teammate Valtteri Bottas on this occasion when they put the red tyres on was 0.2. Now that could be that Lewis didn't get the perfect lap. It could be that when they put the red tyres on, it kind of nullifies everything, and that is the basic limit of the car. And the basic limit, of course, of Lewis is about 0.2 quicker than that of Valtteri Bottas. So it's close. Of course, all of this means nothing if now that he's on the pole, Max Verstappen makes a great start, gets cleanly out of turns 1, 2, 3, gets a nice run down into turn 4, and behind him, because he wasn't on the pole, Lewis Hamilton on the dirtier side of the grid perhaps doesn't make a great start, maybe has a lock-up, maybe gets involved in traffic, then the Bahrain Grand Prix will be all over. But if it comes down to a straight fight in that early phase of the race, when both Max and Lewis will be starting on the medium tyre, that's the tyre on which they set the fastest time in Q2, it will be really interesting to see how Lewis operates at that moment, because in theory he has a slight advantage over Max in terms of the way the Mercedes uses its medium yellow tyre. But there's no way in the world Max Verstappen is going to make it easy for Lewis Hamilton at that stage. And then, of course, all bets are off, because by then it'll come down to strategy, it'll come down to who does the best with the pit stops, it'll come down to traffic, it'll come down to the leader inevitably always having a slightly easier time in terms of managing his tyres. So round one of this bout, which is the first round of the World Championship, goes to Max Verstappen and Red Bull Honda. Well-deserved too, really quick in the test, really quick, of course, at the back end of last year, as we all know. Let's have a look at some of the key moments of qualifying. Sebastian Vettel and Esteban Ocon not making it through to Q2. Both those drivers could say, yeah, held up by the yellow flag at turn 1 when Nikita Mazepin spun in his last attempt to try to get into Q2 in the Haas. But in reality, neither of them looked brilliant today. Sebastian Vettel always looked a shade slower than Lance Stroll, and Lance Stroll, to be fair, was struggling to get into Q2 at that moment. So whether or not Sebastian actually would have got into Q2 is a debatable point anyway. But they were out early on. But the sensation of Q1, without any doubt at all, was Yuki Tsunoda in the second AlphaTauri, making his debut in Formula One, second quickest overall at the end of that first session. A fabulous lap. This guy has so much talent. He's a lot of fun. Yeah, he was swearing a bit on the radio yesterday. Yeah, he was getting a bit frenetic in traffic in an untimed session on a Friday morning, but he will learn. That's part of his makeup. He's a very fiery, aggressive driver, and he's super quick as well. Gave Pierre Gasly a bit of a shock today, that is for sure. So at the end of Q1, Max Verstappen had done a 30.4, and Yuki on only one run, but Yuki Tsunoda went out on the second set and did a 30.6. Amazing. Lewis Hamilton had done the same lap time, so that was brilliant. But that kind of then ruined qualifying for Tsunoda, because when it came to Q2, AlphaTauri, strangely, I think, for a rookie driver like Tsunoda, said, yeah, run the medium tyre, we're quick enough, we can get away with it. Now, at the end of the first runs in Q2, Yuki hadn't actually gone that quickly, because it's not that easy to go straight from a high grip red Pirelli into a yellow medium race tyre compound Pirelli. He took a while to adapt. And I thought at the back end of Q2, when it was risky as to whether or not he was going to get through into Q3, that AlphaTauri, as with the two McLaren drivers, as Zach Brown did with the McLaren drivers, Andreas Seidel probably, putting them back onto the soft tyre, I would have thought that's what they would have done with Tsunoda, but they left him out on the medium and he didn't find the balance. He couldn't really get into the groove. He couldn't find a sweet spot and he didn't make it through to Q3. So that was very anticlimactic for Yuki, but nonetheless, everybody knows how quick this guy is now and it's brilliant to have him in Formula One. So let's have a look at what happened in Q2. Initially, the medium tyre, the race tyre, and this tells a story of the teams that are really confident now of their own pace. The two Mercedes, the two Red Bulls, the two AlphaTauris, and the two McLarens. At the back end of Q2, they went back to the soft tyre, and it was a good thing they did. And particularly Lando Norris at the end of Q2 on the soft tyre was P4 30.0, really, really good lap. And we've just seen some fabulous driving from Lando all weekend. And Lando loved the way you're going back to the classic helmet design. I wonder whether you're going to have a different helmet design for every race, but I hope not, because this looks great at the moment. And McLaren breathing the rarefied air of being number 3 in the pit lane now. As you go down the pit lane, of course, it's Mercedes, and then it's Red Bull, and then it's McLaren, reminding everybody of their brilliant end to the 2020 Formula One season. So McLaren Honda looking good, and looking good for a good race tomorrow. They seem to have lots of reliability. Daniel Ricciardo's fitted beautifully into the team. No surprise there. Done a better job in terms of fitting into the team and getting the job done, I would say, than Sergio Perez, who was out on the medium tyre, and a little bit like Tsunoda, he was kind of lost as well. The minute they put him back onto the medium, Perez, and the first run he did was 30.7 against Max Verstappen's 30.3. They left him on the medium and he did a 30.6, didn't get through to Q3. So not a great first weekend for Sergio Perez. So Lando Norris had a really good Q2. He was P4 on the medium tyre at the start, and then when they went back out on the soft, he did a 30.0, which effectively made him equal first with both Ferrari drivers, who also did a 30.0 on the soft tyre. Now, does that mean Ferrari are right up there now with McLaren, Mercedes? Yeah, I guess it does. You know, in terms of a lap time, making it happen, the Ferrari is a quick car. And we saw at the end of Q3, Charles Leclerc putting in a 29.6, an amazing lap right at the end of qualifying to be P4. This is the best Ferrari have looked, the best car Charles has had, you could say, for probably at least 12 months now. So as we've been saying for the last 4 or 5 days now, ever since we chatted to Antonio Giovinazzi, and he was so explicit about how good the Ferrari power unit now is, Ferrari kind of are back. Really good to see. So Charles Leclerc was P4, you could say best of the rest. And Pierre Gasly, very, very good again, 29.8 when it really came down to it on the soft tyre. He did a great job. By then, he had nothing to worry about from the other side of the garage because Yuki hadn't made it through to Q3. Another driver who looked really good in Q2 and got into Q3 was Fernando Alonso. As I said yesterday, he looked really good on race tyres yesterday, and that was a time that most observers didn't see. On the soft tyre now in Q2, he did a 30.9 and a 30.6, no problem at all. Into Q3, first drive for the rebooted Alpine team. So another very good performance from Fernando Alonso. Good to see him back. Good to see that trademark initial flick that he gives the steering, particularly into turns 11, 12, 13, around there. You can't really see it from the onboard, but you can definitely see it when you occasionally have a drone shot. There were a couple today of Fernando going into those corners, and you could just see that flick he gives the car, and then it's all down to his incredibly supple hand and footwork. He's lost none of that, and it's great to see it again. Another good performance, and it's not necessarily because we spoke to him on Thursday night, was Antonio Giovinazzi. Now, he didn't get a proper run in the beginning of Q1. He was in traffic. He did a 32.3. So they're sitting there. There's 3 minutes to go. They go out. And he did a 30.9. That was a really, really quick time. Bear in mind, Fernando did a 30.8. Sergio Perez at that point hadn't gone any quicker. There was traffic. You know, Valtteri Bottas, 31.2. Antonio Giovinazzi, 30.9 in the Alfa, straight into Q2. Very good performance. Kimi Kimi Räikkönen at the same time doing a 31.5. So excellent performance from him. He didn't get into Q3, of course, but he did a very good job nonetheless. So Alfa Romeo, Ferrari, I think have picked up a little bit of pace relative to their opposition from last year, as Scarbs has been saying when he saw the car, and certainly as Antonio said when he chatted to us on Thursday night. Of the other drivers, Lance Stroll, I think, did a pretty good job keeping the name of Aston Martin in lights, kind of, after the disappointment with Sebastian Vettel. Made it through to Q3. Like the two Ferrari drivers and Fernando, he didn't go out on the first run in Q3 because he'd basically run out of red tyres, only had one set left. So we didn't expect much from him there. But nonetheless, a good performance from Stroll alongside that of the much vaunted 4-time world champion. But you've got to say, Aston Martin at the moment doesn't look to be quite the team that Racing Point, indeed before that Force India, was. Only branding and, of course, the usual updates and the changes for the new regulations. It's strange how things can change without people really understanding what is the cause and effect. But a very different driver chemistry right now, and one wonders how much effect that has on the team as a whole. Anyway, we'll see as this season progresses. Mick Schumacher did a good job for Haas, didn't get out of Q1, but did a good workman-like job, 32.4. Nikita Mazepin struggling, didn't look comfortable in the car, looked a little bit as he looked when he was driving for ART in Formula 2, when he never really got with the music. And then when he went back to high-tech, he was a different driver again. He needs a lot of management, Mazepin, and I'm not sure. It looks like he's a little bit discombobulated at the moment. But 32.4 for Mick Schumacher, not a bad time at all. And another very, very good performance from George Russell, of course. He was struggling in the first run in Q1, but he did a great job, did a 31.3 to get into Q2 alongside Nicholas Latifi, who, as I keep saying, wasn't that slow in Formula 2, 31.9, so 0.6 quicker to George Russell. Got through to Q2, of course, that wasn't going to go too much further, but he kind of has done the job that Williams, hopefully, are paying him a lot of money to do, because he's doing an outstanding day's work. The battle between Lando and Daniel, but I'm speaking a lot about that. I've said that, I don't think we should take it for granted that Daniel's going to come in as the Grand Prix winner who's going to dominate that team. Lando looking very, very good at various stages of the weekend. Outstanding in Q2, as I say, first on the medium tyre, then on the soft. And in Q3, guess what? Exactly the same lap time, 29.9 for both of them. Daniel just a shade quicker. So a really good pair of drivers there, very good looking car. Take out Sergio Perez, who didn't make it through to Q3. Add Charles Leclerc, who did that brilliant lap, 0.3 quicker than both McLarens, and Pierre Gasly, who was a shade quicker than both McLaren drivers in that very, very quick Alfa Tauri-Honda. So that section of the midfield is going to be dynamic to watch. Don't take your eyes away from that. At the front, though, it is going to be Max Verstappen on the pole. It's going to be Lewis Hamilton on the dirty side of the grid, but very, very quick on the race tyres, not as quick on the red tyre. It's going to be an interesting run down to the first corner. If Max gets the clean run, it's his day, I would predict. But having said that, don't underestimate how fast that Mercedes can be in the hands of Lewis Hamilton and to some extent Valtteri Bottas in race trim. And then right behind, on the ragged edge, Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. He's there in P4, having outqualified his teammate by 0.6 of a second. A margin, no doubt, that Sebastian Vettel will be looking at as well. I'm not quite sure what conclusions he'll be drawing, but he'll be looking at it, that's for sure.